About 10 years ago, Land Rover realised there was a huge gap in the 4x4 market. That gap needed to be filled by a recreational, fun 4x4 vehicle. In their own range, the Range Rover had gone significantly upmarket, leaving a big gap between that up here and the good old trusty Defender. That gap needed to be filled, and it was especially important since the Japanese were flooding the market with all sorts of 4x4s. Land Rover had to think of something. Well, the rest, of course, is history. This is the Discovery. In fact, it's the new Discovery, although many people who have seen this new Discovery dismiss it as just a facelift, just a light change there, a little bit change here and there. Land Rover assure us it is all new, and it is an all new driving experience. Let us take you on Car File tonight on a journey of discovery.
A deserted highland glade in North Scotland, the perfect setting, you might think, for Land Rover's new Discovery, monarch of the glen, master of all it surveys, or so the advertising and marketing hype would have you believe. Actually, it's probably more at home dropping the kids off at school in Surbiton and going on to tackle the wilds of the Sainsbury's car park. But this is the mad 4x4 marketing scene, where reality takes a second place to the myth of off-roading. And you think by buying a vehicle like this, you're granted the freedom of the wilderness. Land Rover always like to get the most out of their body tooling. After all, current Defender doesn't look that different from Series 3 Land Rover from 25 years ago. The Range Rover was introduced in 1969 and went for almost 20 years before it was changed. Now we've got new Discovery, just under 10 years from the original launch. But though the vehicle looks the same, make no mistake, this is an entirely new vehicle from the wheels up. New Discovery is longer and wider, with a wider rear track, and there's lots more space in the back for the 6th and 7th seats, which are now forward-facing with clever headrests that swing down from the roof. Surprise, surprise, it's going to be more expensive. First surprise, under the bonnet there's a new diesel engine, and it's not a BMW. It's a 5-cylinder, 2.5 litre new diesel engine developing 136 brake horsepower and a massive 232 pounds-feet of torque. But more importantly, it delivers that torque really low down in the rev range. There's 80% available from just 1300 revs and 90% available from 1450 RPM. Now, you might think that's technical gobbledygook, but it's very important to Discovery owners who tow, because so many of them have heavy boats or caravans and horse trailers, and that means you can move away from rest without slipping the clutch or struggling with low range. But when you do decide to emulate the adverts and the articles in the car magazines in your brand new 4x4, and you find somewhere in this crowded island where you can go off-road, it's a situation that I must say is heavily frowned upon by the ramblers, the horse riders and the mountain bikers. Well, then you get into a seriously high-tech scene in the new Discovery. In the first place, the steering has been changed to avoid kickback and fight on rough surfaces. The rear suspension is now self-leveling with air springs, and that means that you can raise the height of the vehicle when you're going over rough ground. And the vehicle will also automatically sense when the middle of the car is grounded and the rear wheels are spinning, and it'll raise the back end automatically. There's a new anti-lock braking system that works really well off-road, and a thing they call electronic traction control, so that the traction to the wheels is done electronically and not by a viscous coupling, and that removes the need for a lockable central diff. And there's also a thing called hill descent control. Press a button and the vehicle will automatically maintain a speed of between 4 and 7 miles an hour, depending on gear, down the steepest hill. Now, it's not doing it through engine braking, it's automatically giving braking effect to front and rear axle to get the maximum possible grip. And that is a very safe system indeed.
One of the surprises Land Rover unveiled at the Discovery launch was the new Storm diesel engine. It's not related to any BMW unit. The Storm was in the early stages of development when the German firm took over. Originally planned as part of a modular group of 4, 5 and 6 cylinder units, the Discovery gets the 2.5 litre straight 5, producing 136 bhp, but more importantly, a maximum torque of 232 pound-foot. And a large proportion of that torque comes very low down in the rev range. In order to achieve the specific requirements of Land Rover's heavy off-roader and still meet future emissions requirements, the engineers needed to turn to high-pressure direct injection. The engineers chose to adopt electronic unit injectors, or EUI. This system had a proven track record in large diesels fitted to trucks, reducing emissions whilst increasing economy. One of the keys to good diesel emissions is high-pressure fuel injection. EUI uses an individual camshaft-driven plunger pump for each cylinder's injector. This allows up to 22,000 psi to be generated, compared to about half that for a standard direct high-pressure injection system. And because the pressure is only contained for a short period within the injector, there's plenty of potential to increase the pressure further. Common rail systems, which are becoming the vogue in diesel design, are limited in the pressure they can contend with because of the connections and distribution pipes needed for them to operate. Land Rover proudly claim that the new unit exceeds even future emissions requirements without needing a catalyst. They also say that there's room for even greater results in future as the TD5 is developed further.
Roger, you've been driving off-road for more hundreds of years than I care to remember, but I mean, this vehicle seems very sophisticated, lots of electronic gizmos. Do we really need them?
Well, I wouldn't put it down as electronic gizmos. What we're trying to do is make the vehicle more user-friendly. How many times have you been with colleagues or other people driving off-road when they've struggled to find the centre diff lock or they've struggled to find low range? Instead of having a lever that moves in several directions, as a transfer lever does on Land Rover products, we've got a forwards and a backward movement. We've got low range, we've got high range, and that's all you have to worry about. The electronic traction control will look after the rest. The hill descent will help you descend hills, even if you're not used to selecting first gear. So I think we've made the car user-friendly, even if we have used electronics to make it work easier for people.
Oh, it's had a tremendous impact on the dealership. It's attracted a whole range of new customers to the business and enabled the dealership to grow year on year for each of the last 10 years. We find more and more families looking at the vehicle as an alternative to a passenger car saloon. In this area, it's been very, very popular, both with farmers, industry and families. The Freelanders attracted new customers to the franchise, hopefully perhaps Discovery owners of the future, but it's enabled us to appeal to a much wider market. The Freelander, I think, appeals to everybody. We've sold an enormous amount of vehicles to single individuals, families with small children. We were delighted the vehicle didn't change. The customers have stated time and time again that the distinctive styling met their requirements. A host of minor changes and improvements have, of course, been introduced. The main benefits of the new Discovery are felt when driving on the road. We encourage people to drive the vehicle both on the road and off the road. We still believe the Discovery is a class leader off the road, but it's now truly a pleasure to drive. Land Rover is a class leader off the road, and it's very, very important that dealers can demonstrate this effectively to customers. I think old Discovery owners have certainly already found the new Discovery to meet their needs, and our order bank is growing daily as we test drive the vehicle to existing customers. But clearly, when one drives the new Discovery, it must appeal to drivers of executive saloon cars. I think the success of the new Discovery will match the success of its previous model, and we can look forward to a very, very healthy few years. It's a very, very exciting time with the product range we've now got and the further ambitious plans Land Rover have in the next couple of years. Within the next few years, the product range will change yet again, and Land Rover will then appeal to an even wider section of the motoring public.
One of the major criticisms of old Discovery was that unpleasant lurching and rolling on quite gentle tarmac curves and dips. Drivers got used to it, but it did give passengers a queasy ride. The car seemed to lurch over to an angle and then settle at that angle through a bend. Now comes ACE, Active Cornering Enhancement. There's an electronically controlled hydraulic ram at each corner, and that works to keep new Discovery on a level plane through the bends. Hurrah! There's no denying the effectiveness of the electronic gizmos across country with the new Discovery, but for me the most impressive factor is now the way it performs on the road. At high speed it's very stable, and gone is the lurching and swaying that used to put so many people off. It's now a very sophisticated road car.
Chris Goffey there in the dramatic highlands around Inverness for the launch of this new Discovery, and you probably realise from the noise that it is actually raining outside. Fantastic, what great weather to try out a 4x4 vehicle. Well, many people don't actually get their vehicles wet. They put it in the garage as soon as there's any hint of any little mud that might mess up their beautiful off-road vehicle, which is kind of strange when you think of the technology that's gone into a vehicle like this. Well, Howard Stableford in part 2 of Car File will be taking the new Discovery around town to see if people in suburbia can tell the difference between Mark 1 Discovery and this all-new, very important for Land Rover, Mark 2 Discovery. See you in part 2. Hello, welcome back to Car File. Every week on this programme we take a look at one significant contemporary or brand new car on the market, and this week we're in the new Discovery. In part 1, Chris Goffey was on the launch in the Highlands of Scotland and trying out every little facet of the Land Rover Discovery, getting it really wet and muddy. And if you weren't impressed by the rough stuff, saying, well, I only use it for the school run, take a look at our next report. Howard Stableford taking it around town, the new Land Rover Discovery.
You'd think that with little other good news coming out of Rover at the moment, that their heads might be elsewhere rather than improving on a success story by introducing the new Land Rover Discovery. But here it is, and in a showroom just about near you now. The all-new Land Rover Discovery, which looks just like the other one. To be fair, this is partly the result of an owner's survey, which said we like the styling, but improve the road handling and the build quality. And so what you get is this. It's very hard to tell the two apart, so here is MotorWeek's 4-part guide. A U-shaped surround to the front grille, that's an obvious one. An extra 5 inches body length gives more space in the back and a more balanced look. It's also slightly wider, which makes it beefier and improves stability. And new, higher, larger tail lights. Well, clearly the new version isn't designed to turn heads, so you'll have to persuade people that it was worth paying the 7% or so extra because it's a much classier drive. And to test that theory, well, we'll just have to drive them both at the same time. Land Rover first introduced the Discovery as a seriously professional all-rounder, smooth and comfortable in town and on motorways, with superb off-road capabilities to compete with anything else around. And it largely succeeded. OK, much of Middle England thought it was just the thing for popping the kids down to school and never found out what that second little gear shift was for, but most serious owners were generally happy on the whole, and Land Rover received plaudits from the motoring press.
We've done almost 1,000 detail changes to the basic suspension system of the vehicle. It now rides on wider track. It has a much more direct steering system with much better feel. We've changed the steering geometry, we've changed the rear axle geometry, and all of this means that every vehicle in the Discovery range is far more capable, more drivable and more pleasurable on-road than the previous model.
There are four main technological stories with this vehicle. First one is ACE, Active Cornering Enhancement, which radically improves the on-road behaviour of the vehicle, it limits roll through cornering and gives the vehicle an almost sporting feel to the driver.
Up to cornering forces of about 0.4 G, which is pretty brisk driving for most people on the public road. We use electronic sensing and hydraulic actuation to eliminate body roll completely, taking away absolutely that sense of tippiness that some people are concerned about in this type of vehicle.
When you take ACE off-road, because it's an intelligent system, it is able to detect it is operating off-road, and we are able to totally reduce the roll stiffness of the car by effectively disconnecting the roll bar system. This means that the axle articulation of the new Discovery is in fact almost the very best of the whole Land Rover range when used off-road. So simultaneously ACE improves off-road performance, gives the customer a feature that he said he required in the car, and yet at the same time he gets more Land Rover-ness when he goes off-road.
Now, I'd never driven a Land Rover Discovery before these two brutes landed up in my drive, and the first thing you notice is just how high the driver's position is. Land Rover call this the command position, presumably because you get a commanding view. And what's more, the horizon expands even further at the touch of a button. Going up. Whoa! I can see Surrey from up here. But then again, we are in Surrey. A good way to test the handiness of the layout of the cabin controls is to drive any car for the first time at night, so you can grope your way around and feel whether things are where they should be. And one thing I couldn't find were those seat controls, which is on the central console here. And one thing that I'm not keen on at all is the position of the door handle, which is well forward and down quite a long way, and that hasn't been changed on the new version, but it is a bit of a minor quibble. The old version is perfectly comfortable, but this one is even better, with a larger windscreen, which allows me to see even more of Surrey from my leather-bound perch. Also, an obvious add-on are these armrests, fully adjustable and a very good idea. Electronic gizmos abound here too. There's, for instance, his and hers matching digital heat controls, and two new buttons here which activate some important new improvements. For instance, this one is your hill descent control. This switch jacks the back of the car up on self-leveling air springs to give you extra clearance over boulders and whatever off-road. Or if you want to lower your rear end onto a tow hitch to connect up to your powerboat or glider. And then there's this that everyone talks about. It's a curry hook, somewhere to hang your takeaway on. They've thought of everything. Both Discoveries seat 7, but with not the sort of legroom that you'd expect in an MPV back there. And although my kids loved the side-facing rearmost seats, they're not really practical for adults, and the owner's survey wanted those changed. So the new rearmost seats are forward-facing, with superbly clever drop-down headrests. There's still not a lot of legroom, although you can take your mind off those sore knees by tuning into your own choice of radio station. Garfunkel in the front for Mum and Dad, and garbage in the back. Both versions of the Discovery I'm driving have comparable power units on the surface, but they're very different underneath. This is the old 3.9 litre automatic V8 injection, which does 0 to 60 in a respectable 11 seconds, but has an alarming combined MPG of just 17. Gulp. It's supposed to be slightly quicker and more frugal on the fuel too, which is good news. It's definitely more responsive, the power-assisted braking works really well, and is it me, or does it have a tighter turning circle than the old version too? It certainly feels like it. For a start, they've stiffened up the chassis, which now has an extra cross member, and they've introduced steering improvements, which make the car handle much more responsively like a smaller car. But the ace in the hole, as far as this car is concerned, is precisely that. ACE, or Active Cornering Enhancement. Land Rover told us that one of the most significant developments on the new Discovery is its ACE. And no, they weren't criticising the old Discovery, well, they wouldn't, would they? But one snipe often levelled at the outgoing model was that it pitched and rolled through corners, a corollary of its excellent off-road ability. The engineer's aim was to provide car-like handling without sacrificing the off-road ability Land Rover owners have come to expect. The answer? ACE, or Active Cornering Enhancement. Lateral acceleration is detected by body-mounted sensors and the information fed to the system computer. The computer assesses the situation and decides whether you're flying along your favourite A-road or going completely mad off-road. An engine-mounted pump provides the pressure required for roll control modules, which counteracts body roll and stiffens suspension movement. And having ACE rather than conventional anti-roll bars allows for lower rate springs, giving maximum articulation off-road and passenger rise comfort. The system senses what's needed. As a result of this technology, the new Discovery carves up bends much better than before. The car doesn't roll as much through corners either, and the electronic roll control is designed to cut in and out unnoticed. As for safety features, well, airbags abound in both models, but I'm very surprised how thin and tinny the doors are. They don't seem to be too protective, although sitting up here I suppose the only thing that's going to broadside you is a lorry or another Land Rover. And in any case, the aluminium doors on this old version have been replaced by steel ones, which will at least help to prevent dings. Well, Rover need to sell between 60 and 70,000 of these a year, and whereas the entry-level price is about £25,000, by the time you've got to this top-of-the-range V8 version, you're looking at £35,000 with extras on top of that. In its class, it's a class act, and Rover will be keeping their fingers crossed that their middle-class buyers aren't hit by that other nasty discovery, an economic recession.
So there you have it, the story of the Land Rover Discovery, and next week on Car File, another new important model. Well, it started to rain here. Perfect weather to take my Discovery out. See you next week.